Welcome to Soul Inspirit, where spirituality meets real life. I'm Summer Paradiso, a psychic medium, intuitive guide, yoga teacher, and artist here to help you reconnect with your highest self. Here, we dive into the practices that strengthen your connection to intuition, higher self, spirit, and source. We'll explore my signature Soul Inspirit method, a fusion of movement, meditation, and creative expression designed to help you release emotional blocks and reclaim your power. Because to move through life with alignment and ease, we must first embrace vulnerability. Whether you're just spiritually curious or fully immersed in the ocean of woo-woo, this is your space to explore grounded spirituality. Expect soulful convos, real-life stories, creative tangents, and grounded practices to support your transformation. So take a deep breath, grab your coffee, tea, or whatever keeps you sane, and let's explore how to bring more magic, meaning, and soul alignment into your everyday life. Let's do this. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to today's episode of Soul Inspirit. I'm your host, Summer Paradiso, and happy freaking New Year. It is 2026, and we are in that weird in-between integration week where the kids are back at school, we're all back at work, and trying to remember that, okay, we are in a new year. We learned some things about ourselves over the holiday break because we very likely engaged in different activities that could have brought about some new awareness of our social interactions, what activates us when we're in certain social interactions, and we also might just be running low on energy because I don't know about you, but the holidays really take it out of me because we celebrate 3 Christmases. I introduced Yule this year to my family. So we had 3 Christmases. We had Yule. We had my dad's birthday, my husband's birthday. We had the New Year, and it's just wild. So here we are. Happy New Year. And today we're going to talk about discernment. And discernment is one of those hot words right now. If you follow anyone on the spiritual platform on Instagram, anyone in the woo-woo industry or self-help or holistic healing, discernment is a hot word. Now, if you've been listening for a second, I get you will hear me talk about how some words start to piss me off and how they've been overused so much that they've lost their meaning and their potency. Healing is one of them. I've talked about that a lot. And I'll probably come back to that again. But I will say discernment, I'm not mad at yet, because I do think there's something really important about this right now, especially as more and more people start to engage on these journeys where they are adapting and evolving into a new version of themselves. And so that's the topic we're talking about today. Little disclaimer, I have a stuffy nose because I'm living in a petri dish with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and from November to February, this is just kind of how it is. So if I get a little too nasally for you, then just feel free to shut me the fuck up and move on to the next podcast. But if you can hang out, then here we are. So with discernment, this is the ability to judge with wisdom or deep insight. This is very high priestess energy. If you're into tarot, this is very 7 of Swords energy, like kind of this being able to cut through the crap and really hone in on inner knowing. This can be making a decision where you are needing to incorporate some wisdom that may arise about yourself. This could be learning something new about yourself or a situation and discerning that no longer serves you or that you are now going to react this way. This word is being thrown around a lot, and it is very powerful. What we're going to talk about today with discernment is about this skill and how you can access it more deeply. So here's the thing about discernment. If you are not in a practice of using discernment, especially when it comes to realizing things about self and looking introspectively, it is not going to be something that comes naturally. It is something that you are going to need to carve out space and time to develop as a skill, just like you would anything else. I feel like the biggest lesson here, if you don't listen further than this, is just hear this. When we expect to be good at something without practice, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We learn and practice everything else in our lives, and yet it seems like self-help, introspection, learning about self is one of those things that is a lot harder for people to engage in a practice with. And so know right now that as I'm telling you about discernment, you're not going to get off of this podcast and start discerning better. What you will do is have a light shown on this concept of discernment, and you may start paying attention more. And I will give you action items. But just know this is something that is a practice. I think one of the reasons that discernment requires practice is because it requires you to move into an observer position, or it requires you to put yourself in a container where someone can observe for you and shine a light on something that needs to be addressed. And as 3D human beings, we are often very much in our own shit and forget that we are celestial bodies having a human experience. And until we can start pulling our awareness outside of ourselves and look in as an observer, we are not going to be able to discern. It requires a bit of detachment in order to see what's going on. It's just like you can watch someone in, like a good friend in a relationship that is not great for her. You can see it. Everyone else can see it because they're the observers and they're like, what's going on? Why is she in that relationship? And she cannot see it and takes a while to get out of that relationship because she cannot see it, because she is not observing herself as a third party. All of you friends that are watching are the third parties. And even if someone speaks up, if you have that one friend, I'm that one friend, by the way. If you have that one friend who speaks up and is like, yo, this is not okay, this is not safe, this is not good for you, this is toxic, she still may not receive it because she is so deep in the first person and not observing. And you'll notice too, when people get out of a shitty relationship or situation, we say hindsight's 2020. And guess what? That is when we're stepping into an observer position because we are outside of the situation looking back as a third party. And so that's when some discernment comes in, some realization comes in, because after the fact, you're able to remove yourself from the situation. Now, I do feel compelled to share with you guys why this came up today. One, discernment is a hot topic. And two, I had a wild ass dream that I need to share parts of because this is what made me think about it. And in this dream, I was tweezing my eyebrows because I will be vulnerable for a minute and share that I have a unibrow and I haven't seen those come back in. I could totally rock it. I could be just like Frida and like really embrace the unibrow, but I have not gotten there. So in my dream, I was not embracing my Frida Kahlo. I was tweezing my unibrow. And as I was tweezing this unibrow, I pulled the hairs out with the tweezers and I put them like in this little square container on the counter. And as I pulled out the hairs and put them on the counter in this little box, they revealed themselves as these mortifying bugs. And they didn't look like cockroaches. They didn't look like ants or flies or any specific type of creature, but it was very like alien bug, menacing, does not belong in my face at any point kind of creature. And it was alarming. And I was terrified because I was pulling these out of my face. And the thing about dreams is they have very interesting ways of sharing things with us. But I sat in meditation this morning being like, okay, what actually was going on there? And one of the things I remembered thinking in the dream and feeling as I was tweezing my eyebrows and like taking out these bugs and then looking at them in this container, the biggest fear that I felt like in my chest was, what if I didn't get them all? It was this fear that I did not get them all that immediately came after pulling out something that I didn't even know was there. I did not even know that these horrific little succubus bugs were in my face. And once I realized they were there, I immediately went to fear that I hadn't gotten all of them. And so with something as weird as this, you got to step back as a third party. And I'll just rattle off a few things that I realized here. Tweezing my eyebrows is something normal, something I do. It's an activity that I do almost daily. So it's very mundane, not exciting, something that I'm not engaging in a lot of thought about. It's familiar. And it was disrupted by a realization that something was there that did not belong. And the parallel that I feel when I'm looking at it from this perspective is when we have an epiphany or a realization that we had a belief or a mindset that existed within us that we realized was not ours. And yet it had been living inside of us without us even being aware of it. And we only became aware of it once it was released. And this to me is a really interesting level of discernment, because the discernment happens after the release, after the expelling of the malignant idea, thing that was within you. The realization that I had been invaded or violated in some way felt super icky and felt alarming and immediately turned on that fear mechanism. And yet I would have had no idea had I not just engaged in that very mundane activity. Then from the fear, I'm asking the question, did I get them all? We can perceive as awareness expanding. It does not have to translate as anxiety. It can translate as acute awareness. And I am just feeling compelled to say this because I feel like a lot of times when I have clients or just people that I know who have come to a realization, or even myself, when we come to a realization after separation from the scenario and we have this level of discernment where we're like, oh my God, that did not fit, that did not work. And then we immediately engage in panic, like, oh, I might not have gotten them all, or there might still be something wrong. It's this assumption that we are out of control. And what I would like to offer you as a new perspective in this episode that I guess I didn't even plan on doing until right now is that when you have a moment of discernment, of realization, especially if you are a perfectionist, give yourself a second to, I'm seeing a golf clap, like give yourself a golf clap, give yourself a pat on the back for seeing this as something that did not fit. And then take a very intentional, deep breath and remind yourself that this does not indicate imperfection. The fact that something existed there does not mean that there's more. This is not like if you see one cockroach, it means there's a bajillion. There might be more, but that's part of this journey. And we're not meant to excavate everything all at once. And so if you're feeling those, like that anxiety feeling, like those jitters, the flutter in your stomach, like, oh my God, I realized this, but now I'm feeling really uncomfortable. That's just your physical body's response to this new mental awareness. And it's trying to integrate. And because it's been shaken out of what felt normal, because guess what? It felt normal with the bugs in your forehead. It felt normal like that. And now that they have been extracted, even though that's in theory good or better, your physical body was used to having them there. And so now it's immediately telling you it's a fear response, but it's important for you to identify it as an expansive response, an awareness response. It's just like, I forget who has said this, but your feelings of anxiety or fear or jitteriness, like going on stage to be in front of a bunch of people, you can say you're anxious or you can say you're excited. The physical body is reacting in the same way. And so the reframe is super important to be able to move forward at a higher vibrational frequency. And so what I'm saying here is when we have these moments of discernment, of realization, it is imperative that we allow ourselves to maintain a high vibrational frequency so that we can use it to our advantage and continue to discern more. Maybe there is more, maybe there's not to pull out of your forehead, but the awareness and the excitement of expanding that awareness is what we should frame this as. Now, I want you to think about when you have had one of these aha moments, a moment when you have realized there was a bug in your forehead, the weirdest metaphor of all. But think about it for a second. When have you had an aha moment? I am willing to bet that it was on a walk, driving, in the shower, doing something monotonous and not stressful. I'm willing to bet it wasn't in the middle of the night when your baby is screaming because they have a stuffy nose. I'm willing to bet it wasn't right after you got rear-ended. I'm willing to bet it wasn't on the first day back to work after Christmas break, because we cannot engage in introspection and discernment when we are in fight or flight. And most people are existing in a consistent beta wave pattern. They're existing in fight or flight. Now, this doesn't have to mean you full-blown think, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is podcast related, but I'm always here for a sign from spirit. In the tree just outside my window, there's a woodpecker just pecking. It's a red-headed woodpecker. Taking the time to peck that tree and look within. That's wild, guys. I'm always here for a sign. I might have to look back at that a little bit later and come back and share, but we have a woodpecker with us. as our symbol for discernment. Where was I? Now, when we think about fight or flight, this does not mean you have to be in full blown, like you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, fight or flight. This can be a lower variation. When we are living in this perpetual state of stress, when we are not providing ourselves a container to regulate our nervous system, to release the thoughts that are on a loop in our brain, when we don't give ourselves space to move, to create, to be still, we are not giving ourselves the opportunity for discernment. It is out of sheer convenience that in the shower, a lot of us cannot do much else. Although, if you're someone who's listening to a podcast in the shower or an audiobook, you're probably not having those discernment moments either, because you are constantly on an input loop. You're filling the silence. And so this is an invitation here to start creating these containers in your life, these pockets of time, to allow for, we can call them downloads or moments of discernment, because they are not going to just happen and fall out of the sky. You might have some, but this is a practice. And your practice in being able to discern is to create the pockets of time. And so with, I would say, most of my clients, I work with a lot of amazing, powerful, badass boss women, and almost all of them, I have to have them take out their calendar and block off 3 minutes, 5 minutes of time at random parts of the day in order to have that mandatory block of time to go stand outside and ground, to doodle, to sit the fuck down and just exist, to do breath work. It depends on the person and what they need, but creating those pockets of time is what is going to lead you to easier access to discernment, easier access to observe a situation as a third party. Even with that said, in creating pockets for yourself, hard truth, but a lot of you, even with those pockets created, are still going to be operating in a consistent state of stress because it has been your default for so long, because it's what our society has conditioned us to do. It's not your fault. It is not something to get down on yourself about. It is something to simply notice and take action for. And in this scenario where you're like, okay, I'm doing these like short pockets of time, I'm still feeling completely on edge and don't know what's going on. I don't know what is activating within me. I'm not discerning what's going on. That is when I would offer a third party perspective. And some people might call this therapy. Some people might call this a reading from me. Some people could even call this talking to the one friend that you know will tell you the truth. No matter what you choose, knowing that creating space to receive from a third party could be exactly what you need to get that aha moment. And it's not because you're incapable. It's not because you don't know how. It's not because you don't have the knowledge within. It is because you have all of this like fuzzy static from operating in consistent fight or flight. A really good example of this happened yesterday in my first Soul and Spirit connection reading of the year. If you're unfamiliar of what that is, a Soul and Spirit connection reading is where I connect with your spirit guides, past loved ones, highest self, source energy, whatever, whoever, to come through with me as your channel to provide a message for you. And every single client I have had, always 100% gets the message that they need to hear in that moment. the delivery is different. Sometimes it is a past loved one that holds a lot of weight for you. Sometimes it's source energy. Sometimes it's your highest self. Sometimes it's just your straight up spirit guides that are like, yo, you need to hear this. And the woman I was giving a reading to yesterday, I said something to her and she just stopped and got wide-eyed for a second and was like, I know that. And for some reason, you just saying that to me here and now hits so different. And I feel like I truly know it, like I can receive it. And this is a perfect example of what I'm saying, in that she created this container by booking a session with me as a third party. She came to the session open to receive, and she heard something that, again, she knew, but could not embody, could not get out of her head, could not exit fight or flight mode to be able to like truly access the knowledge. And so in receiving it in that container, she now has a light shown on where she can look introspectively, where she can investigate further for further discernment. And that just makes me so happy, because that is truly what happens in all of my readings, in that they are containers that bring discernment to people and essentially start the ball rolling, because it gives people a direct instruction on what to look at, what to do. It gives them the action to move into. It helps them reclaim their control because they have direction on where to look. And it's just amazing to see. And I think it's so exciting in these readings to be able to deliver a message of specificity for someone to focus on, because a lot of us, I would argue the majority of us, are wanting to become the highest version of ourselves, are wanting to adapt and react differently to situations that previously would have had us in a full-blown fight or flight response. And it can be very overwhelming to tackle that, because we are talking not just this life of preconceived notions and adapted mindsets and generational trauma. We have ancestral trauma. We have past life karma. We have inherited thought loops and emotional blockages from our parents and their parents and events that have happened in past lives and this life. There's a lot to dissect, and it is so overwhelming to look at it as a whole and be like, oh my God, where do I start? And when we provide ourselves with the container of space to allow the guidance to come in from a third party or from yourself as the observer, we then can focus on one thing and work on ourselves bit by bit, because it does not happen all at once. I'm pretty sure we would just explode into a big bang if we tried to excavate and integrate and embody all in one go. So if this episode activated something, sparked something in you, I would love to hear about it. If you are like, okay, great, I want to discern, I want to pull some bugs out of my face and know what they were and make sure I get all of them out, I would ask, as an actionable step for you this week, today, carve out 5 minutes to do something mindless. Bonus points if it's tweezing your eyebrows. Go for a walk. Take a shower with no sound. Drive in silence, sit in a meditation, doodle, draw circles for 5 minutes. Whatever it is, just make sure that it is something that you do not have to engage in a bunch of thought, because that is what's going to block the discernment or the realization. And if you want to get real weird, as you probably do if you're listening to this podcast, when you're laying in bed tonight, even if you're someone who doesn't really remember your dreams, lay in bed, close your eyes, and say to yourself, I want a dream to help me discern something, to help me realize that something within does not belong. Just ask. And if it doesn't happen tonight, ask again. Because when you set the intention of dreaming or having a dream, it actually helps. And that sounds like a whole other podcast episode. So let me jot that down. If you are feeling like you're starting off this year ready to go, you're feeling fired up, you're like, all right, I'm ready. I'm going to carve out time. I'm going to do this. And you want a little support. You want some help from a third party to shine a light on what to dissect first. Book a Soul and Spirit connection reading, because I can guarantee you that you are going to get a message that is exactly for you in the moment, and you are going to leave feeling empowered, feeling excited to be able to tackle it. The link is in the show notes. And another link that's in the show notes that I have to tell you is the priority list for my 8-week transformation. I ran this transformation twice last year, and you guys have not seen it available since July of last year. And I'm going to be opening the doors again very soon. And I have a plan for the people who join this priority list in January. There is a very extra special bonus for you. So if you have been following me, eyeing this 8-week transformation, and like, you know what, I think this is my year, get on the priority list and get on it soon so that you can see what juicy bonuses I have for you in there. So here's to the new year. Here's to discernment. Thank you guys so much for being here, and talk soon. Thanks so much for listening to Soul Inspirit. If this episode moved you, sparked something, or just made you feel a little more like yourself, I'd be so grateful if you left a review or shared it with someone you love. It helps more souls find this space and join us in raising the collective vibration. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to share what came up, I'd love to hear from you. DM me on Instagram or email me anytime. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and keep showing up, because the real magic shows up when you do. With so much love.